What's up, guys? It's Mark Michell here. Just wanted to take 10 seconds of your time and let you know I would love to be your bass instructor if you're looking to get serious about your playing. So come join the community over at lowenduniversity.com. You can get your first month of membership entirely free right now. Enjoy the lesson, and I'll see you over there. Hey everyone, Mark here at Low End University. This is lesson 126. In this lesson, I'll be giving my approach to arranging songs for solo bass. This is a lesson request that came in. I'll go ahead and read it to you. This is from one of our members. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. It's Sven Marinkovic from Croatia. Very cool. Never been there. Would love to go one day. The request is, hey Mark, I was wondering, I never really got the hang of playing different chords and arranging a solo bass song. Would it be possible to do a lesson on different types of chords, what to focus on when arranging, and how to incorporate chords with other techniques as well with progressions in order to create a song? Also, could you maybe do a lesson with common progressions used in different types of music? Well, that last sentence is a whole other lesson in itself, and it's in the pipeline, so we'll talk about the first bit about arranging songs for solo bass with different chords. So the little thing I just played here at the beginning of the video, sort of just a solo bass little musical passage I've been sort of toying around for the better part of a year or so, sort of adding things, taking away things. And the way I'm approaching this is exactly what I'm going to break down for you in this lesson. Let me go ahead and preface this lesson by saying that if I had to give two lessons from the library that really are prerequisites to understanding this one, it's lesson 49, mapping out the diatonic triads, and lesson 122, voicing chords for bass. So if I'm kind of glossing over things, as I'm going to be doing since this is an advanced video, please go watch those videos, especially lesson 49. That is how I'm deriving any chord used in this progression and the progressions we talk about. So if you have no idea how I'm getting these chords, please go watch that video. It will explain everything you need to know. And because, again, this is an advanced video, I'm sort of going to be going kind of fast when speaking about some of the music theory concepts here. So a couple things I want to point out. The way I approach solo bass, number one, I feel it's best utilized on at least a 6th string. This high C string really opens up the ability to play chords in a higher range that's conducive to sounding good. And if you've watched lesson 122, I talk in there about voicing chords for bass and how chords on bass can very quickly sound very bad due to the low range of the instrument. It's really about spreading the notes out as much as possible. And because you have to do that, you really use a lot of resources when playing just chords. You know, when I'm doing some of these chordal shapes, I don't really have any part of the left hand available to do any sort of melody. You know, if I play a chord that's kind of like this, maybe I have a pinky free. If I want to do a melody on top of that, I really have to use tapping, or else I'm just, you know, confined to this pinky kind of going. I don't really have a lot of freedom with that because I literally don't have a lot of freedom with where I can go. So tapping is something I really like utilizing because it brings this whole other hand in the equation. I can very quickly make melodies very quickly. So if you're going to do solo bass, that's a great way to do it. If you do some lower range stuff, you want to have a lot of moving, walking parts just with single notes. You can sort of kind of go. I like to do it with chord sustain and sort of bringing in that extra technique. And in this lesson request, it talks about using other techniques, so I'm going to mix that in as well. So when it comes time to write a song, you want to decide on a key. What's the key going to be? It can be anything. You know, in a band setting, it may be because the guitar player has an easier time not using bar chords all the time and wants to play some open positions. The vocalist range may be in a certain key. But as a solo bass player, the keys are really irrelevant. You know, I can go F sharp major to G major in 1 inch. So it's really what sounds good to you. I suggest using keys that allow you to use open strings every now and then, which is what I do use in this piece, the little piece I played at the beginning. Open strings just allow you to not stay so much in this range the whole time, and you can have those big sort of bass notes at the bottom. Okay, so just having an open string every now and then just gives you more variety in your chordal choice, and sort of allows you to have some of those lower notes in there if you do. So that's just my suggestion there. Now, the backbone of songwriting to me is about giving yourself options. This is exactly what I said in one of the recent lessons, how to create contrasting bass lines. And I talked a little bit about creativity in there, just that you need to have options. You need to give yourself options, because creativity comes from having lots of options to choose from. It's like an all-you-can-eat buffet. The more choices you have, the more things you can eat. Best way to think of it. So what I'm going to do now is sort of derive the diatonic chords from the key of A major. So the solo bass piece I played at the beginning is in the key of A major. So if you say, I want to write a song in A major, my first step is to determine what chords exist in that key that I can pull from. You want to create like a bank of chords to choose from. Okay? So I'm going to do that now. And the first thing I do is play the A major scale in 2 octaves. So that sort of identifies where I'm pulling the notes from, okay? And then you just want to go on each scale degree. You know, if you've watched lesson 49, if 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C sharp, I'm just going up each scale degree, giving it a number. You just want to do every other number, and that gives you a diatonic triad based off of that scale degree. So 1, 3, 5 would be A major. 2, 4, 6 would be B minor, and so on and so forth. So you want to go through and find every chord. So we'll start. Let's do that. So just using this scale, here are the diatonic chords. A major, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor, G sharp diminished, and then back to tonic, which is again A major. So now we have 7 diatonic chords that naturally, naturally, those are the same things when referring to keys, the 7 chords that naturally exist in that key. So now on the screen, I'm showing you right here all 7 chords that are diatonic. So that quickly gives me a chord bank to pull from. Now, how I would use those chords is dependent on the melody. So we're not there yet, but I can quickly create music just using those chord progressions. Very easy. Those are all chords that I'm pulling just from this bank. See, it's very easy to create a chord progression once you have a bank to choose from. If you just say, I'm going to start a song in the key of A major, if you don't have that bank to pull from, or you really know what you're doing on that level, you kind of go, well, what chord's next? A major? Do I go to G minor? No, that doesn't sound good. So you don't really have any direction. These chords just give me some options, okay? So now, as I also talked about in lesson 49, mapping out the diatonic triads, a great songwriting tool to give your song some direction or different pull, some extra tension, and just a twist and turn every now and then is I like to also map out the chords inside of the parallel minor scale. So what I mean by parallel minor scale is the same root note, just major, minor. A major, A minor. If I'm in C major, the parallel minor scale, the parallel scale would be C minor. D major, D minor. Same root note, very easy. So if I go through the A minor scale, do the same thing and pull those triads out, I can now add 7 more chords for a total of 14 different chords to use. So let's go through and do that, okay? So those are going to be pictured in the red color. A minor, so we have A minor, which is 1, 3, 5. Okay, and then we have B diminished. Then we have C major, D minor, E minor. I guess that would look like this. And then F major, G major, and back to A minor. So again, I derived all 14 chords by simply going through the A major scale and the A minor scale, finding the triad off of each scale degree, and that gives me a chord. Now you can expand that further and really get 28 chords if you go one step further with just the skipping numbers. So instead of 1, 3, 5, you go 1, 3, 5, 7, and that gives you now the 7th chord that's diatonic. So you can go further and just go so A minor 7, and then no. That gives you the 7th chords that go into that. Now, we're not going to get into that because that just can make this really long and drawn out. But just know that I'm sort of going 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6, 3, 5, 7. You can just go one number higher with skipping numbers to get the 7th chord. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, 8, 3, 5, 7, 9, so on and so forth. Okay? So these 14 chords here are now a very cool chord bank I can pull from. The chords in blue are the diatonic chords. I want to really focus on those chords, but the chords in red are the parallel minor chords. We're going to call them, some people call them altered chords or borrowed chords, because you're borrowing the chord from another scale that's out of key, but you can use them, and I'll explain why those work here in a bit. I want to use primarily the blue chords. The red chords, I just want to use like a certain seasoning in a recipe, just a little bit every now and then. It doesn't need to be overbearing, because then you really lose the tonal center of A major, which is what we're in, okay? So a couple examples I'll kind of go through, I've written down here, of how to use these borrowed chords is that I can do, let me just preface this by saying that any chord progression works. You can use these chords in any way you want. You can go, A major to C sharp minor, to E major, to D major. The order of the chords is where songwriting can be anything. It's like, how do you write a story? Your plot can go anywhere. So you can use these chords any way you want if it follows your melody. So I can't really give you any guidance on how to structure these chords, but there's some common ones that work. The 1, 6, 4, 5 progression is probably one of the most common chord progressions in music. If I were in C, that would sound like this. Okay, so that is one of the most common chord progressions. I'm just going from the 1, the 6, the 4, the 5. Okay, so you can look up lots of different chord progressions that are very common, and they're just going to be labeled as numbers. And if you don't know what I mean by numbers on the Roman numeral system, lesson 49 will tell all of that to you. So some common ways to use the borrowed chords, and then we'll get to the solo bass piece and how I wrote that. These are used, again, sparingly, like little spices, just for a different extra flavor, twist, direction. If I go from a 1 chord to now a 4 chord, okay, if I'm switching between those, I can make the 4 chord minor, which is in the red chord bank. See, D minor's in there. I can use that D minor just to give it a different feel. So let's say I'm going sort of like normal diatonic. Go again, but D minor. Just a little different twist, and I'm borrowing from that borrowed chord bank, and it can just give it a different sound than always sticking with diatonic chords. The next one is going from, let's see, a major 1, so would just be A major, the root chord. If I want to go to the 2, which would be B minor, let's say my chord goes between 1 and 2. That's pretty cool. But let's say I wanted to really build some tension and make it resolve to the 2. I can add a diminished chord between that. That sounds a lot different than just the first way I played it. Add some tension. Okay, this isn't really borrowing a chord. I'm just sticking a B flat diminished chord in between it. And that's not really a part of this lesson as far as chords inside of this chord bank, but I'm using that in the solo bass piece, so I wanted to sort of outline why I'm doing that. Another example is that, you can use those parallel chords to segue an entire new key. So if you sort of go from this diatonic chord bank, the blue, and I pick a red chord, that is one step closer to being into a whole different key, because the chords in red are not in the first key of the blue chords. And the reason they work is because parallel minor scales, the chords inside each are only one note different usually than the notes inside the diatonic chord. If I just take the 1 in the blue chords, so just A major, and then the 1 of the borrowed chord, the only difference is one note, this note, or. So one note difference to a listener is a very subtle change that can be done smooth. This is about transitioning in a smooth way, okay? Same thing, if I do G major, I still have these notes inside of A major, B, and D. So G is just one note different from, say, one of another chords that has those two, which would just be like B minor. So again, to sum all of that up, the blue chords and the red chords share lots of common notes, and to a listener from a songwriting perspective, using those red chords doesn't sound like a complete knee jerk. Okay, that's why you'd want to use that. So now to break down the solo bass piece and talk about how I wrote that. Before I added the second part of this song, I'll just play the first part, and I'm using all the diatonic chords. And you can see on this chord bank where the little circles follow along, just to show you that I'm pulling diatonic chords to create this stuff. So here we go. I'll go really slow.